Everybody. I hope everybody's having a good week. I'm really sorry. Last week I totally forgot about the midweek devotional until Saturday night. But this week I'm going to do one today, and Hunter's going to do one tomorrow and get us caught back up in our study. Uh, we've been going through Paul's life in Acts. And tonight we're going to study about when him and Barnabas visit Lystra. The book of Acts spends more time discussing the events that took place in Lystra than any other stop on Paul's first missionary journey. And it may be because it's one of the strangest stops that Paul made. When they got there, they were treated like gods because they had healed someone. But instead of listening to Paul's sermon, they totally ignored him and tried to make sacrifices to him. And then finally they did a complete 180, and they decided they should watch as the Jews stoned them and drug them out of the city like they were dead. But we can learn a lot from Paul's time in Lystra that's still relevant to our Christian lives today. I'm going to read Acts 14, verses 8 and 10. Now at Lystra there was a man sitting who could not use his feet. He was crippled from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul speaking, and Paul, looking intently at him and seeing that he had faith to be made well, said in a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet," and he sprang up and began walking. Just like when Peter and John found the lame man at the entrance to the temple, Paul and Barnabas found a crippled man in Lystra. And like today, these healings would have been a miraculous thing to witness. It would have been unbelievable to everybody, and it would have gained a lot of interest from everybody that heard about it. And it gave Paul and Barnabas some credit. If they didn't have healing powers, then the people wouldn't have any reason to believe anything they were saying. It set them apart from just any other person on the street. The apostles didn't heal for the show of it, but they healed because they cared about the people they were healing. Verse 9 says, "And Paul looked intently at him, and seeing that he had faith to be made well." A lot of people would ask, how can you see somebody's faith? Inner peace shows on the outside in everything you do, how you treat people, how you talk to people, and how you act. If we're anxious and nervous all the time, or we don't know how to act in circumstances that we can't control, we don't have faith. We don't have faith that God's in control. Philippians 4:8, Paul tells us to concentrate on the good things in life. If we're sure to focus on the good and godly things around us, then our faith will be visible too. I'm going to read verses 11 through 18. "And when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in Lysanian, 'The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men.' Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And the priest of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance to the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates, and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their garments and rushed out into the crowd, crying out, 'Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men of like nature with you, and we bring you good news, that you should turn from these vain things to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. In past generations he allowed the nations to walk in their own ways, yet he did not leave himself without witness, for he did good by giving you rains from the heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness.' Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the people from offering sacrifices to them." If Paul and Barnabas had healed the man around Jews or Christians, it may have been a little different, because Jews and Christians would have attributed the healing powers to God. But they did it around Gentiles who attributed it to Zeus and Hermes because they were the gods that the Gentiles believed tales of. If Paul and Barnabas had been out to glorify themselves, then they would have went along and played as if they were Zeus and Hermes. But they didn't. They were straight up with the people and told them they were men just like everybody else. And they attributed the healing to God. Paul stressed God's supremacy to the people. In verse 15 he says, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men." Paul stressed God's supremacy to the people. In verse 15 it says, "God created the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all the things that are in them." He discredited everything they had known and they had been taught. He disproved the idea that there was more than one God. I'm going to finish by reading 19 and 20. "But Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and having persuaded the crowds, they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing that he was dead. But when the disciples gathered about him, he rose up and entered the city, and on the next day he went on with Barnabas to Derbe." So the Jews came in and convinced the Gentiles to let them stone Paul and Barnabas. And when the Gentiles saw that Paul appeared to be dead, no one believed in their divinity anymore because the gods they believed in were supposed to be immortal. But Paul didn't let this awful experience keep him from doing his job. Now, if I was stoned nearly to death, I probably wouldn't wake up and go to work the next morning, but Paul did. He did not get discouraged because he failed to teach these people. He got up and he kept on going. Some Christians have been thrown out, kicked out, cussed out for trying to spread the gospel, but you can't let that stop you from doing the Lord's work. I hope you all have a great week, and I hope to see you soon.